Today we'll be walking you through the different types of housing in Chico and hopefully answering any questions you have about housing as a Chico State student. The first type of housing is going to be dorms. Chico State has 7 on-campus dorms and 1 off-campus. And these dorms are kind of split up into usually like a sister community. So the first 2 are going to be Lassen and Shasta, and those 2 are the oldest dorms on campus and they're sister dorms. So they are across from each other and they're identical on the inside. They can only fit double rooms, so you will only have 1 other roommate instead of having 2 or sometimes 3 roommates all in 1 room. And I actually lived in Lassen my freshman year. I know the most about these dorms because they're the ones that I lived in. When I lived there, it was 1 wing was girls and 1 wing was guys on each floor, and each wing had its own bathroom. Last year, and I don't know if they've changed this back or what, it was co-ed, so the bathrooms were still male-female, but you could be a female living on this end of the building and have to go to the female bathrooms way far away. I don't know if that's changed at all, but I would find that super inconvenient. And from my personal experience, this is truly the best dorm because it was quiet Monday through Thursday or Friday when you needed to get homework done and people went to class, and then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, it was super fun and we got up to a lot of nonsense in my dorm. You're also pretty close to the dining hall, and these are pretty ideal for wanting to roll out of bed and walk to class. Whitney is known as the party dorm. It is 9 stories tall and the tallest building north of Sacramento. Now, like I said, I lived in Lassen, so I didn't spend too much time in Whitney. I did go to a couple of wine Wednesdays over there, and they really did find a reason to drink every night. Margarita Mondays, tequila Tuesdays, wine Wednesday, or what I like to call why are we drunk Wednesdays. I don't remember what they called Thursdays, but there was a reason to drink every night there, and they definitely did. I'm not saying that if you live in Whitney, you're automatically going to become a dropout alcoholic, but it's definitely a higher possibility, at least when I lived in the dorms. Whitney had a huge dropout rate, and that was usually due to parents seeing their kids' grades after the first fall semester of their freshman year. But plenty of people that I knew that lived in Whitney are now graduating with the rest of us, so it can work out, but I would definitely be careful, especially if you are one who maybe enjoys partying a little too much already. Next to Whitney is Sutter, which is the home of the dining hall and the newest dorm that we have on campus, and it is 3 stories tall, and it's the honors dorm as well. Sutter, I think, has singles, doubles, triples, and more. Whitney has like up to quadruples. I didn't know anyone that lived in Sutter. I've never really heard much about it other than it's definitely quieter than the other dorms because sometimes sophomores live there. It's less like chaotic freshman energy compared to where I was living in Whitney. Now, the bulk of students live in those 4, and those 4 are all on the corner of campus, still attached to the main campus block. Just off of campus are Machupta and Eskin, which are right next to the sports fields, so like soccer and the track and all that, just off of campus little ways. So if you like get hungry and you want to go eat lunch, it's not a 2-minute walk, it's like a 7-10 minute walk. And lots of the freshman student athletes live there, and you have like a smaller community, so if you're into a milder environment, that may be a good living situation for you. It used to be the honors dorm. I think they might switch out what like communities are inside each dorm every year, so I would keep an eye on that if that's something you're interested in. And then just behind Machupta and Eskin is Konkow, which is one of the 2 apartment style living dorms. So instead of having you and your roommate or roommates and then a communal bathroom that the whole hall shares, it is a cluster of 4 rooms, 2 people in each thing, and like a shared either 1 or 2 bathrooms. And you'll have your own bathroom and kitchen that you're responsible for cleaning yourself. So if you prefer like a little bit more independence, to feel more like an adult, instead of having to go eat at the dining hall, being able to cook for yourself at home, that's a good option for you. And it is one of the furthest dorms from campus, except for UV, which is University Village. It's a mile from campus, and it is also apartment style. They have their own like swimming pools and jacuzzis, and it's kind of, at least when you live in the dorms that are on campus, almost not even thought of a dorm. It's like its own apartment complex, and it's, I would think, a little bit harder to make friends because instead of being able to go all the way down the hallway and knock on every door, it's like going up to people's front doors in their apartments and knocking on those doors. So there's a little bit less of a community feel, and And if you are not someone who is very good at waking up early in the morning and getting on the bus or walking about 25 minutes to campus, it's not gonna work out very well for you because it is quite far away, in my opinion, because I think a mile walk to school, while it's not like in the snow or anything, can be a make or break. Like if I'm running late, do I want to walk to school, get all sweaty? So keep that in mind, especially your freshman year when you're still trying to figure out how to be an independent adult. I think it's harder to keep your bathroom clean, feed yourself, and get to school all the time, on time, consistently. If you're already a more independent individual, that's a great fit for you most likely, but for myself personally, I needed the kind of coddling of living right on campus and being fed by the school. And Konkow and UV are the only places that you can stay during Thanksgiving, Christmas, spring break, and summer break. They're known as the like extended stay locations, I think. A lot of transfer students live in, especially UV, I know, and a lot of foreign exchange students live over there. And it can be a great place to make friends, especially if you are transferring and you want to make friends. It's like a good halfway point because you won't be around, like I said, chaotic freshman energy, but you won't be all alone in some random apartment like the ones I will be describing in a second. Those are all of our Chico State on-campus housing options. Next, I'm going to talk about off-campus housing, which there are multiple types of off-campus housing, and between me and Jack and all of our other friends, pretty much everyone I know has lived in some variation of these places, so I would hope that I can give you pretty sound advice on all of the different types of apartments and houses. There is one off-campus dorm that isn't run by Chico State, and it's called Craig Hall. It's about as far away from campus as UV is, but it isn't run by Chico State, so there's no RAs. I think they have their own dining hall, and it is way cheaper per month to live there, and you can kind of get that dorm experience, and all the furniture is provided for you and all of that sort of thing without paying dorm prices, because the cost for the dorms is very expensive for Chico when you compare it to the apartments, but you have to keep in mind that it's kind of like this added social and location benefit of living really close to campus. So I think Craig Hall is a good place to kind of make friends on a budget. If you're coming to Chico and trying to pay for yourself entirely, the dorms can often be way too expensive, but because the dorms are such a good part of the college experience, that can be a good kind of halfway point. Next is going to be regular apartments in Chico. There are so many apartments directed at students just all around the perimeter of campus. They've been set up so that they pretty much only rent to students. That's where you want to live. You want to live pretty much as close to campus as you can, because trust me, it is going to be dumping rain sometimes. It has hailed and I've had to get to class. The weather in Chico can be kind of whack sometimes, especially like in August and May when it's 95 degrees. You're gonna want the shortest walk to campus that you can possibly afford, which is hopefully like 20 minutes maximum. Luckily, the school has an entire resource page of school approved apartments on their website. It's linked in the description down below. All of these places I know of, and I know that they're all student living quarters. Post campfire, there's probably some families living there, but it is on the whole student housing. And they're like the biggest, best companies in Chico to rent from. Now, if you've never rented before, and even if you've lived in the dorms, say your freshman year, now you're looking for your first apartment, you need to know that most apartments in Chico cost like $400 to $600 per person, and that's having your own room and probably sharing a bathroom. And these apartments that are in this price range of like $400 to $600 are not super nice. That's because a lot of them were built in like the 80s, like the 70s or the 80s, and then they just kind of have let people party in them for years. Now, I'm not saying that there's like black mold everywhere, but you're not getting like high-end stainless steel, everything's perfect and beautiful and nice. They're all laminate floors and carpet and the cheapest materials possible. Like those videos that you see of people punching through those super cheap plywood doors on those college junk pages. It's like that. What do you expect? I mean, you're a Chico State student. There's a history of of Chico State students being pretty delinquent, the apartments pretty much fit that mold. And I think that that's fine because realistically, you're probably gonna do some stupid stuff and you're probably gonna break something in your apartment at some point. Even if it's just like you didn't really clean out your bathtub for the whole year that you lived there and now it's super gross. You don't want to lose a multi-$1,000 deposit. You just want to kind of accept that your $200 deposit is gone now instead of, oh, I put down a $2,000 deposit and that's gone. And it really is, the nicer or the newer or the more recently updated your apartment is, the more the rent is going to be. And I've seen it be for something as little as like they put in a new stove, so now your rent is $50 whole more just to have a newer stove. Like not a high-end stove, but just a regular newer stove. Typically, I would recommend just, especially if you're paying for it yourself or if your parents are on a tighter budget, I would just, you know, whatever, I'll take the cheapest option because at the end of the day, you're just there to go to class and go home and sleep. And like I said, know who you are. If you like to roll out of bed and walk to campus in 10-15 minutes, pick somewhere close to campus. Don't go live in Creekside at 13th Street, which is like a whole 45-minute walk to class if you're not someone who likes to walk 45 minutes to class, because that's like the big sophomore party spot and it's like Whitney for sophomores and no one goes to class and it's this whole dropout cycle because you're so far away from campus, no one wants to go. So I'd definitely be super careful and know yourself. Like I know that I am lazy and I do not want to walk to class for that long. I know not to move too far away from campus because otherwise I'm not walking to class. Oh look, it's already past the time that I'd be there on time, may as well not go. If you know that you're that kind of person, try to live as close to campus as possible. It will save you so much in the long run, not only in grades but in money for the classes that you're not failing. So that's my like biggest recommendation is location. Like I mentioned about Chico housing being kind of gross or like just not super nice and updated and very much poorly built, cheaply built many years ago, there is this new influx of housing for students that didn't exist when I was a freshman or sophomore, and it is the luxury apartments. We are up to like 4 or 5 of them now, and they cost approximately like $800, $900 for a room. Sometimes for a room that you have to share for $800. No one should have to do that, okay? If you have money to spend and you don't care, by all means go live in these places. They have tons of amenities, usually a pool on site. Everything's basically brand new. There's usually like a gym there or blah blah blah. Like there's a whole laundry list that they try to give you of nice stuff. The problem with these places is they will go on campus to the freshmen that have never really looked at housing cost in Chico and don't know that you could pay $400 in rent, and they make the $900 sound normal, and then they get freshmen who are signing their first lease ever and don't really understand what that legal contract means to sign leases, and then they can't get out of them, and then their parents are like, what the hell are you doing? Like like signing leases without us knowing about it, and now we have to pay $900 in rent for the next whole year. So these places, sure, they're super nice, but I find their marketing practices kind of morally reprehensible as far as like, I mean, screwing over dumb freshmen. Should they know better? Sure, but they don't. And I think it's wrong to be like, oh, you're dumb, here, give me your money. Give me your money. You know, I want people to make informed decisions, especially when it comes to signing a legal contract. And they'll kind of draw people in with like, oh, we'll give you some AirPods if you sign our lease, or we'll give you $200 gift cards, or like there will be free coffee here every day. And the other thing about these places is they'll sell you on security, and then the gates are open all the time. And the homeless are just walking through, going through the trash, exactly like you specifically requested there not to be. And they don't care and they don't do anything about it. Can you tell I'm bitter? I have like a whole other video planned on this subject because it's infuriating. Definitely be cautious. If you want to have a super nice apartment with all those amenities that I've described, they're also on the CSU Chico link that I've linked down below. Yes, they're super nice, but they're super expensive. But you know, if that's what you want, feel free. They're the easiest leases to get because they are so expensive, whereas you will have to fight a lot more for the cheaper $500 ones because there's fewer and fewer of those as time goes on, because everybody's kind of bumping up their prices between Campfire and more students every year, and there's just kind of a general lack of housing in Chico, so be on top of it for sure. The last housing situation that you end up in is in a house. I haven't lived in a house, but I've lived in a studio behind a house, house where I was like a part of the house's bills, usually the rent will be about the same, maybe a little bit more expensive than an apartment, but the houses have kind of hidden costs in bills. Utilities will be higher, and you usually have to pay for some kind of waste management to come take your trash every week. And then parking can be an issue unless you have enough allotted parking spots in front of your house for however many people live there. Especially if you live downtown, there's never going to be any parking. That's totally a problem because most houses are designed to have maybe 2 cars maximum because they're not meant to have 4 to 5 people who all have cars living there. So definitely keep that in mind. It can just be a lot more expensive and a lot more difficult to find a place close to campus that's affordable with parking and all of that mixed together. And houses, I think, are usually not as well kept up compared to apartments, especially when you consider that a lot of houses are where the house parties happen. They can get kind of gross. That's not true for every house. There's plenty that I've looked at online that are not gross, including the studio that I lived in was totally fine, but the rent is definitely more expensive. You're probably further from campus. And yeah, that's about it. Most apartments that you'll probably live in are either along Nord, which is just on the other side of the baseball field, and then things that are down in downtown, or I would only go probably like 2, maybe 4 deep into the avenues because otherwise you're just so far from campus. Of course, you can live further from campus and bike to school or drive to school, but I would recommend just trying to find what fits into your budget as close to campus as possible for your needs. As far as actually getting a place to live, now that you kind of know the breakdown of where to live in Chico, what different types of housing there is in Chico, specifically for students, I would look into maybe some people that you are interested in living with. In the dorms and in some of the luxury places, it's just automatically assigned, which can be nice, and there are a couple of different like lotteries for that at the different apartment complexes, even the cheaper ones. But I would try to find people that you at least know a little bit. I've found Craigslist roommates before. I didn't find that to be a good experience, but living with acquaintances or people that you vaguely know can all be fine. I mean, you can live with strangers and really not have any problems. It just kind of depends on your temperament and how experienced you are in having roommates. You'll definitely learn a lot about that if you do end up living in the dorms because you'll be randomly assigned to someone and they'll either be your best friend or you'll never really talk and it's fine, or they'll be your worst enemy or somewhere in between. Who knows? Once you kind of know who you want to live with, I'd start looking around super early. Like now, between now and the end of March, you want to have a place to live and you should just send in applications, and application fees usually aren't too crazy in Chico. I think the most expensive I've ever paid is $50, which is pretty whack, and that's for one of the luxury places. I think $10, $15, maybe $30 is like the most I would say that they typically charge, and usually that'll be like a background check on you and a credit check on you, and then you'll want to have a parent co-sign because typically at 18, 19, 20, 21, you don't really have a long enough credit history or enough income to have your own apartment without a co-signer. So have a parent who is kind of willing, or maybe aunt, uncle, grandma, grandpa, somebody who is willing, because most places in Chico don't accept you without a co-signer, and have them ready to go, like maybe already have a picture of their driver's license because that's usually what they need, and like their email address so that you can email them the paperwork so that they can get it back to you in a timely fashion. And other than that, it's just kind of keeping in contact with these people. Don't be afraid to call them. I mean, I know people don't really call each other on the phone too much, and that's typically the answer. I think that living in Chico can be incredibly affordable. It is, or at least used to be when I started going here, the most affordable CSU in California as far as like housing prices go. So I think it's a good place to live, especially in college. And it kind of gives you that, wow, this apartment's kind of nasty. I can't wait to go out and make some money so that I can have a nice apartment one day. Hopefully that answered all your questions, because I had one girl comment, which thank you for your comment. She says, where do you dorm and housing wise do you live alone? I want to head up to Chico, but I'm not sure what the best housing would be. I plan to be more independent and get a single dorm. So for you, I'd definitely recommend, if you want to be more independent, one of the like UV dorms where you can have your own room and share the kitchen and bathroom. And I think that's a good setup to kind of have your independence but not be, you know, sharing a room with someone, especially as an adult. Freshman year, it was fine. It was whatever. Especially once you've had your own room, it's really hard to go back to sharing a room. It can make housing way more affordable, but I wouldn't do it after freshman year. I think it's was worth the experience one time, but that's it. Lastly, be diligent. If you want to live somewhere, it's really up to you to go and seek out that lease and make that happen, because next thing you know, it'll be May and you're like, oh shit, where am I living next year? I would try to do it before April, before May if you can. That's the best way to do it, and you'll have more choice available to you. I mean, if you're watching this not in February of 2020 but sometime in the future, you can start looking at houses like as soon as November, October, November. Start thinking about like, oh, I'm living with you, and start looking at places, because they will have you sign leases that early, and then you don't even have to worry about it for the rest of the year. I highly recommend getting on top of it as soon as you see this video. If you haven't figured it out yet, go figure it out. I believe in you. I think you're gonna do great, and just remember, a lease is only a year, and even if you don't like the people you live with, just clean your own dishes and keep to yourself. It's gonna be fine. You just keep in mind that this is like external motivation for you to one day get to be able to afford your own whole place to yourself where no one can bother you. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you found this video helpful. Please let me know if you have any additional comments or questions down below. I'm gonna try and link as many helpful resources as I can in the description. Thanks for watching, and subscribe, and I love you.